Hello, welcome to LLG's Random But Real. My name is Lisa L. Gilliam, and I am the host of this podcast, where we have conversations about any and all things random with an entree, not a side dish, of mental health advocacy. I use my performance, communication, and literary art skills to bring awareness about mental health and other topics. Therefore, whether I am singing, speaking, or writing, it is my desire that my words will be melodic, just like music, to your ears. Please note, the comments expressed in this podcast are those of mine and or the guests. They are not intended to be used for professional guidance. Please seek a licensed professional if you are in need of care or therapy, experiencing trauma, or are in danger. And if in danger, please call 911. Thank you in advance for listening to LLG's Random But Real. I hope you enjoy this podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to LLG's Random But Real, where we have conversations about any and all things random with an entree, not a side dish of mental health advocacy. As you know, mental health can affect every aspect of your life. And so we have this podcast so we can talk about random but real topics, some of which are discussed often, some that are not discussed often. But we want to make sure that we are trying to encourage people in the midst of everything that might be happening in life, and also make sure that we, say things about mental health so that we're, not shying away from some of the difficult topics, but really to try to help others. Every week I am on this podcast that I have a guest. I'm excited about having the guest. And maybe I should say every week, because we pre-record these and then they're released every 2 weeks. And so I am excited that we're coming to a close for this season with one of my friends that I used to work with. Come to find out, we went to the same alma mater as well. So say hello to Michael Shorter. I call him Shorter. Say hello, everybody, Michael.
Hey, hello everybody. How are you? Hey Lisa, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited to talk to you. Like I said, I call you Shorter.
Right.
And if you see both of us together, it's funny, right? Tall and shorter, and in
Right.
the name too. But I don't know. I just had all of a sudden got a Danny DeVito, Arnold Schwarzenegger picture. I don't know if you ever saw the movie they were in.
Oh yeah, I forgot the name of that, but they had on the white suit. Twins, I think it was.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I think
remember
it
that.
was twins.
Yeah, the good old
So
days.
we found out we worked together in a middle school years ago when Shorter was a school counselor. I was, I guess, a mental health counselor, and I say I guess because when I was in school, graduate school, it used to be called community counseling, and now it's called mental health counseling, but it's basically the same thing.
Right.
And then we found out that we both attended Virginia Union, so shout out to VUU.
Shout out to we you, yeah. And don't forget, you know Mr. Dixon, which is my
Dude,
yeah, so we had another connection we didn't even realize even before we knew you.
absolutely. So Dixon was my track and field coach and also the athletic director at my other high school alma mater, Coolidge High School in Washington, D.C. And I grew up with his children. They're older. Well, two are older, one is younger. But we all pretty much matriculated through Coolidge. And so, yep, it's definitely fam. That was a good experience, or a good way to find out that we had so many different connections. I think some friends too that we had in common. So
Yeah,
just
I think
never know
so.
who might know somebody, right?
Yeah, yeah. You're officially official.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's see, where do we want to start? What we used to have conversations like all the time. And I know that you're not a school counselor now, that you're actually practicing mental health therapy. We can start with that. And so what do you see
Or what was it about like just the counseling field that made you want to get into that?
Oh man, that's a cool story. I mean, I graduated college and I remember I majored in journalism and I thought I was gonna come home and get a job with the Washington Post and write sports and life
Mhm.
would be grand because I graduated with a degree. And when back in 99 when I graduated, you would think having a degree would guarantee you something. I learned it guarantees you nothing. And
Nothing.
I was a substitute teaching. And I don't know if I necessarily liked it, but I was good at it. But I knew this wasn't my lane because I knew nothing about it. But what I realized, people wanted me to stay because there wasn't a lot of black male teachers. Um,
Mhm.
and I eventually went to nonprofit, because I wanted to do something that I was remotely and went to school for. So I was working as a assistant editor, but I had an itch to help those kids. I wanted to do something, but blessed teachers, I knew I couldn't be a teacher because what they did, like, they wear all the hats. So I
Right.
saw another avenue. I said, I could be a counselor. I still get my summers off and I get to work with kids. So I went to grad school while I was working. Got my master's and took it from there and I became a school counselor.
Okay. And then how'd you make the transition? How or why? That's up to you if you want to share that. Did you make the transition into actually doing therapy and not, continuing school counseling?
Oh man, absolutely. Like I said, open book today. I love my job, but I saw me doing things that weren't related to mental health, too much of those things. Um,
Mhm.
I felt like an administrator almost in a lot of ways. I'm talking with parents and, calming situations, like counseling teachers who are stressed, doing everything except focusing on those kids that, came to my office and I could see anxiety in a third grade or depression and stress or kids talking about their parents are getting divorced and they can hear them arguing, but the parents don't know they know. And you just see
Right.
a lot of mental health issues with these kids. And I'm like, all I have for them is like 20 minutes before I'm called for another crisis or something I have to do. And that just didn't sit well with me. I
Mhm.
thought I was going to work with these kids with their mental health issues, and I saw too many that were basically abandoned, by myself and the system itself. So I decided I could either stay there and be a disgruntled employee, or I can spread my wings and find another way to serve a purpose, in his life, which I believe in doing. And, I took the steps to, get my NCE and, become a
You have to
therapist.
tell them what that is because some people don't know the acronym.
NCE National Counseling Exam. So
Mhm.
once you qualify, you take that test, you earn your license as a counselor,
Right. Okay.
as a
All right.
therapist.
Right.
Yeah.
And then just so you know, every state, this for the listeners, every state and DC are different. So you want to check that out. And I'm glad you kind of pointed out. It's funny because when I went to graduate school, I chose community counseling as opposed to school counseling or school or guidance counseling because I wanted to be able to help people and do direct work. And I realized that in the CPS, District of Columbia Public Schools, most of the counselors were not counseling or doing any type of therapy. They were doing schedules. They were also
Mhm.
administrators. They were doing that type of thing. And that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be like boots on the ground. We actually had a college and career counselor in my school, but that wasn't all DCPS schools growing up. And so that's why I went that field. But what a lot of people don't know is that like at least in the state of Maryland, Maryland Department of State of Education, you have to have school or guidance on your actual degree in order
Yep.
to work in the school system. So although I
Yeah.
did work in the school system as a third party employee, I can't be employed directly by one. I have mixed emotions about that. That's a whole other topic on another day. I think they should have some type of caveat, and they don't want it to be from a certificate. And because my school, I went to graduate school at George Washington University, the George Washington University in Washington D.C., and they do have a certificate program.
Hmm.
But that would be a certificate. That's not a degree. And so they wanted to actually say that on my master's degree, which basically means that I could chance it and see if they would take it, or I could, go ahead and get a whole nother master's degree. Which, mind you, I stayed and actually did do the secondary school counseling class. The only thing that I'm missing would be an internship, and they
Okay.
will not let you do that internship while you are working. That's something that you do on the graduate level, not the postgraduate. So there are so many different caveats, blockages, obstacles, hurdles, that, I'm finding another lane. To me, doing the podcast is another way of helping people. But these views are our own. They're mine and their mics. We are not trying to counsel or provide therapy on this show. But if you do need resources, we'll give us contact information. You're able to reach out or call 911 if it's really important, because we want to make sure that you are still living and thriving and doing well. So
Yes.
great segue to the next part. So we used to have all these conversations, and I think one of them might have been during the times where you were a little disgruntled, right? And at times I was disgruntled, even though I was working in the counseling area. I was only making very little money, and I was working part time. Grateful for that job. I learned a lot of experience in the 12 off and on years that I worked at the youth agency. Tri-County Youth Services Bureau in Waldorf, Maryland. However, I also, kind of wanted more. But one of the things I really enjoyed doing was speaking to other people who were like-minded. And as we said, we had some things in common initially. And so
You did. Sure did.
at that time, I think that the year before, it was either the year before or that year, my mom had died. So it'll be 6 years in October. And I was placed at this particular school, met Shorter, and Shorter shared with me that his brother had died, which is um, the connection we were saying, the family earlier. This was the husband of one of the children that I knew, and it was such a small world. And grief is also, or can also be universal, right? We may
Yeah.
not experience the same symptoms, but we often do have some of the same ones. And if you've experienced the death of someone that was really close to you, then a lot of times you're able to relate to someone else that has gone through the same thing. And there are days where you're just like, ugh, like it's been almost 6 years, I said, and I'm like, I miss my mom. I had one of those like this week or last week. What is your experience with, grieving and death been like? And how are you moving forward, to continue on with the goals and the dreams and visions that you have for your life, but also celebrating the life of your brother?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I unfortunately, have a lot of experience with grief. And grief is something that we all will be taking a part of at some point. Because there's
Right,
that cycle of
right,
life. You will lose someone who
right.
you love dearly, and you'll have to experience the emotions that come with that. But actually, my grief, it expands decades. Unfortunately, sad to say, but my dad passed away in 95. My brother, he actually passed in 2003. My mom passed in 2012, which is, you're right. It was, you said 6 years ago from your mom. My mom, it was like, over 10 now, I guess, but it doesn't seem that long. It really
Right,
doesn't. It feels very fresh.
right.
And my grandmother passed away a year to the day my mom died almost. She died I think my mom passed on September 6th. My grandmother up of 2012. My grandmother passed September 7th of 2012. So almost a year to the day.
I'm so
And then of
sorry.
course, yeah, and then of course my daughters. I lost my twin daughters in 2018. So, I have a lot of experience with grief. Unfortunately, but I've learned a lot from grief as well. I've learned how to love on another level.
Mm.
And that took a lot of time. I've learned to really what healing really looks like and the work you have to put behind healing.
Okay, so
Um,
we have to break that down shorter because people don't understand like necessarily. So what does love on another level mean to you?
loving on another level means to me is I'm glad you asked that. It means really to find meaning in the loss that you've experienced, to
Mm.
get beyond the grief. I think about Ann Kluber Ross's 5 stages of grief. There's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. But I'm reading another book by, I forgot the gentleman's name, but it was a partner of hers who talked about a sixth level of grief called meaning, and it blew my mind. I just recently read it, and I've already started that path even before I knew what I was doing, which is finding the meaning, because you can let that grief drown you.
Yeah.
It's like you're suffocating in that grief. You're trying to hit a bottom and that's not there because the grief gets so heavy. But what I realized I had to do, I had to find meaning in their losses. I've had a lot of memories with my brother, my dad, my mom, my grandmother. So I could connect to those memories and the love I had for them and the acts of love that we did together, and I could put together in my head, how do I want to serve them? How do I want to represent them? So that's kind of what drives me as being a therapist. People need
Okay.
help. People are suffering out there. People have things to deal with and they don't understand. They need to process. So a lot of that meaning I find in the work I do as a therapist, which I
Okay.
think really represents my family and expresses my love for them in another way.
Okay, that's a good way to look at it. I do want to point out, just for the listeners, although Ann Kubler-Ross is, her work in that area of grief, death, and dying, loss, is phenomenal. Just know that the 5 stages that Shorter mentioned, you may or may not go through all those, and you may
Yes.
or may not go through them all consistently or consecutively. It Grief is different for everybody, but for the most part, if you're grieving, most of the people I've spoken to have experienced those. I know denial was huge for me. Uh, my grandmother passed in '95. I found her. So to walk in on my mom
Mm.
unconscious, in 2020, was that 20? What did I say? 6 years ago. I can't even get my words
Yeah.
together right now.
Yeah.
2017. It triggered me, caused me to have PTSD and memory loss, memory retention, and processing issues. And I don't look like it when you talk to me or see me, but I'm still, physically, sometimes emotionally, biologically, I'll say, in a sense, going through the effects of death. And so when you're like, finding meaning, and then you mentioned about just in finding healing, I'm still on the healing journey. I
Mhm.
want to encourage, the listeners to know that it may take you longer than you thought, because grief ebbs and flows. It's
Yes.
just like the tide. And some days you have some great days, and other days you're just like, whoa, what was that? Like, why am I crying like this? I don't know if you cry, Shorter, but I do. Or why
Oh
am
my
I
God,
so
all the time.
okay?
Not all the time, but I am open to crying and expressing my love, and it's a way to get a release. So I
Right.
have no issue with crying.
Okay. So, and then, some people even have had to have medication just to kind of calm their nerves because the anxiety or the fear that might come. I'm not saying that I mean, some people need different things, right? Everybody might need different things in order to cope or grieve. I am just saying, make sure you breathe. It's a process. And
Mhm.
swallowing the pain, running away from the pain, um, some people, become angry because of it. I've seen that in a lot of youth who don't know how to express themselves because of the grief. Some people turn, honestly, to sex or addiction of some sort, drugs, alcohol, whatever, just to try to numb the pain. Some people, will do. I was actually talking to a coworker. I don't know if she'll listen or not. And I was like, "You love pain, don't you?" Because we were talking about tattoos, which I've heard can be painful. I don't have any, but she has a lot of them. And then, or piercings, which can also be painful. So people will do different things to numb the pain they're feeling. But having been a counselor, I'm not practicing now, but 20 years, and or an educator in the field, I've learned that numbing the pain, turning to anything, for me, I needed Jesus to help, because I
Mhm.
was not in the state that I'm in now. But no matter what your outlet is, if you're doing it and you're not healing, then you're doing yourself a disservice. What do you think, or how do you feel about that statement?
No, I think you're absolutely right. When you try to numb grief, all it does, it goes away, but it comes back even stronger. You
Mm.
have to address the grief. Grief will not let you slide. You're not going to be able to, like, forget about it. You know, it's funny, like you said, that, with the pain, sometimes, the tattoos, people might get them to feel again. I myself got two tattoos, one of my girls and another one of a lighthouse. But that's where that I can understand the pain in getting that, because you just want something to take that pain away. But also, the tattoos were cathartic in that the sense that they're a memory, a beautiful memory of them that I can, like, another way to honor them,
Right.
and that's that meaning that I was talking about,
Mm.
and the meaning has evolved, over the years.
Right.
It's not, the tattoo is just one way, but there's many, many ways, to express that meaning. So I'm sorry, I think I got off target. What was your question again?
I'm not gonna be able to answer. I just told you what I deal with, memory loss stuff. But basically, just saying, like we were talking about running from the pain. I wasn't saying getting tattoos or getting piercings were wrong. I'm talking about those people who are not dealing with their grief, and so
Right.
they'll do something alternative instead of actually dealing with the pain that they're dealing with, actually
Right.
dealing with the emotions or their feelings. If you're sad and you want to cry, cry. If you're happy and you want to laugh, laugh. If you know what I'm saying, but turning to something else outside of yourself instead of dealing with whatever's internal, that can lead down, like I said, basically to a path, do disservice or a path of destruction.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. You're absolutely right. Because in the beginning, that's what I did. I would stuff that grief somewhere. I'm okay. I would take off of work a couple of days and go right back. I think I did take the summer with my girls because I happened towards the end of the school year, but I didn't take the time I needed because I just wanted to keep going. I wanted to be distracted, and I thought that would, like, cover things. Like, work is too hectic for me to worry about the grief. But all the grief did was come back and make everything harder.
right.
You're moving and you're going, but the burdens were so heavy on my shoulders, and I just you keep going and going, and, like, struggling through all that, and eventually, like, life will teach you, like, okay, you're going to deal with this, one way or the other, you're going to deal with it, and that's where I really leaned on, meaning, because those 5 stages of grief were just repeating itself, like you said, it's a cycle, and it could be in
Mm.
different order, but I needed something else, and I found that meaning and applying that in different ways, challenging myself in different ways, going to a
Right.
grief group last year. That was the first
Mhm.
time I did that. The last thing I wanted to ever do, go to a group of people and talk about this stuff. What sense did that make? But it made a lot of sense, and it healed.
So
It did a lot.
healing. I did grief share, or griefshare.org. I'm so grateful. I still have friendships with those people. And the reason people should consider going to support groups is because it is like-minded people who are experiencing some level of grief, loss, dying. So
Mhm.
they're able to understand things that maybe your friend who's never lost anybody or who lost somebody 10 years ago, and so they're over that part, you know what I'm saying, of the constant grief, state, is able to understand, and they can relate with you. Like I don't know why so many people shun counseling or shun away from counseling or support groups or anything therapeutic, but I also find it interesting that you as a counselor didn't ever want to do it. What was your reasoning?
That's an excellent question, because I can always tell people exactly what they need to do, but I couldn't apply that to myself.
Mm.
It was just those things you would, because I knew it would really it would make me feel those on
You
emotions
didn't
on
want to
another
feel
level, on a
it. Mhm.
deeper level. And I was trying to really avoid that because it hurt so much. To be
Right.
honest, it's like, no, I don't want to go there, because I would really get to those raw feelings about, the losses
Absolutely.
that I've, had in my life.
Right.
So that was the challenge. I was just avoiding it because I knew what it takes. Therapy is great, but it challenges you in a lot of ways. It opens up a
It
lot of
worked.
wounds, but those wounds aren't going to heal until you open them up.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah, that is ironic, right? Being a therapist, but being resistant to some of the things you need to deal with
Mhm.
trauma and
I
grief.
think that when we step into doing what it is that we want our clients to do, and of course, I'm not speaking now because I'm not practicing, but when I was, then it opens up another door for us to be able to even be better helpers of healing. We're called
Exactly.
helpers. It's nothing I can say. And I've dealt with death and dying. Like literally, I was in my death and dying counseling course, and my grandfather died, my dad's father. And I was also a minister at that time. And so my cousins were like, well, Lisa's a minister. She can preach the eulogy. And well, that's not what I wanted to do. And, you know what I'm saying? Preach my grandfather's eulogy. But I also was trained at the time. You're always supposed to have a sermon in your pocket, that the one that even though by heart, one that you're always working on. And then I can't remember the third one, but you're supposed to have like three different aspects. And so I had already had a death and dying basically sermon prepared when my grandfather died. And then I just added on. As you know, I'm also a recording artist. And so I have a poem on my first CD, Past the Present, about my grandfather. And I was able to recite the poem. Now it's on the CD.
Wow.
Didn't expect for any of that stuff to happen, or more spoken word, which is wake up and accept Christ today. Because that's just kind of where I was. My grandfather, I loved him, but every family has history. I'll put it that way.
Right.
And so, there was just some things I would see him maybe once, twice a year, or every few years. And then by that time that he died, my dad was already deceased. My dad died when in 90 of year before. A week before my freshman year. I'm sorry, my senior year of high school started. So, I had dealt with a lot of death, prior as well. But, who wants to be in the death and dying course? And I'm learning about how to help other people who are going through it. And here I am going through it myself. But being able to step outside of myself, I think grief work, specifically in the area of counseling, it can be a lot. Grief, trauma work. I used to work mobile crisis, where there were a lot of death and dying calls. We would be the first one on the scene after somebody passed. It still didn't prepare me for having to go through. Well, I can't say that. It did prepare me for having to go through something similar with my mom. I knew what to do. I knew who to call. I knew, all of that. But it's still different when it's your family member.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny how life prepares you for certain things without you even realizing it, right?
Yeah, it does definitely prepare you, but Lord, can I get a break? That's how I definitely get a break. So now that you have experienced the support group, what would you say to other people who are apprehensive about support groups or counseling, therapy, to help move past whatever state? Because let me also put out here, loss does not just mean someone dying. It could be the quote unquote death of a relationship, death of a friendship, death of something that you had, loss of family, a loss of a home, like if you had to leave, or you were was put out because of, what I'm saying. So any type of loss can be still, or you can still find yourself grieving that. So what do you think is your different, or is your output, or your can't get my words together today, y'all. How do you feel? Do you feel like it's different, like now that you have experienced it, from then when you didn't want to go?
What do you mean? Like, you mean
support group? Because at first you said you didn't want to do it, and then but there's a lot of people who are apprehensive, who still nah, I don't want to go to the support group. I don't want to go to therapy, even though they're going through grief. And now you're on the other side of that. As far as understanding how helpful it can be or impactful it can be, what would you say to someone who's still, hesitant?
I would say you owe it to yourself to be the best version of yourself. I think that's what God intends for us, at the end of the day, not to be this or that, but be the best versions of ourselves. And therapy is something that helps you with that, because life has obstacles. Things are going to happen in life that's going to shake you, impact you. And therapy is an excellent way to express those feelings, whether it's individual or group. Therapy is a way for you to let down your guard and put your burdens in somebody else's lap and let them hold them while you just talk about how you feel as a result of those burdens. I can't say enough what group therapy did for me. I actually joined two different ones, at separate times, but just be able to hear other people. You think you're the only one. You think nobody else has went through this. Nobody can relate to this. And you're right. Nobody can relate to your personal pain. It's all
Mhm.
individual, but people have experienced similar things. And when you hear that, and you hear the struggles they go through, the fears, the insecurities, the anger, it kind of normalizes your feelings and it lets you know, like, I'm not alone. I'm not crazy for feeling this way. And then
Right.
you have someone that can help you process those emotions, put them on a shelf, take the burden off your shoulders of all these things, putting them on a shelf, a mental shelf, if you will, where you can where you can at your time, at your pace, take those things off that shelf, be it trauma, grief, anything you've experienced, and you can analyze that box of grief or any trauma, whatever it is, and then you can put it right back on that shelf instead of putting it back on your shoulders. That's kind of my motto. With therapy, it's there to take the weight off of you, help you process and reflect, but also stand up, be tall, head up, straight back, and being able to be the best version of yourself with all these burdens weighing you down. So, that was the difference for me, from going to therapy. I knew what it would do for me. I knew what it would do. I knew it would be a good thing, but the hard part was going through that. And it wasn't easy, but it was one of the
Mhm.
best decisions I've ever made.
Well, I'm glad that you made that decision. I think we talked about that too, a long time ago. So,
Yeah.
and I remember you not like, nah. And I mean, I hear it all the time, but I'm a huge, huge, huge proponent or a cheerleader of therapy support groups, of feeling and emotions and actually dealing with them and sitting with them and knowing, what it is or how you're feeling about something. Like people, when my kids, like when I was counseling, would be like, or even just because I'm also restorative approaches or restorative practices site coordinator, so we deal with resolutions and conflict, all the time. And when someone says, "I don't know why I did it," I say, "Yes, you do.
Hmm.
You know you better than anybody else. I'm not in your head. I'm really, really good. I was a great counselor. I'm really, really good at helping people deal with conflict and etc. and resolving it. However, I am not a mind reader. I
Right.
can't tell you what's in your head." And I remember when I was in middle school, I used to have a teacher. We would go to the board. It was a algebra class or pre-algebra, one or the other. We'd go to the board. She would give us a problem. We could skip steps, right? But we had to be able to explain each step and how we got the answer. It
Mm.
wasn't so much important that we got the answer right. I learned such a valuable lesson in that eighth grade class that if I can't explain whatever it is that I did, then I really don't know it.
Right.
And so I think we can apply that to our lives. If you can't explain why you hit the person, why you were angry, why, you know what I'm saying, you're crying, if you don't want to sit with your own self to find out whatever's going on, one, you probably don't need to be with nobody else, but that's a whole nother show. Until you're healed, we're not going, belabor that unless you want to say something about it. But two, that means that you do still have some work that you need to do. And
Right.
oftentimes we move forward or try to, like you were saying earlier, kind of block that aspect of life when we're still hurting inside and other people don't even know. Even the people who want to be there for you may not be aware that that's how you're feeling.
Exactly.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad that you did get the help. Did you want to say something about that?
No, I think, you said it perfectly, to be honest. I mean, you really said all the things that make sense, and when you're talking about that, it's a journey, and you have to challenge yourself. And like I said, I'm just glad I did it, and I just encourage everybody to, try therapy, seek it out. If you don't like it, fine. It's not a contract, you know.
Right.
And
Stop.
every therapist isn't for you. It might take time. I've
Right.
told clients that, and some clients have decided to find somebody else that was better suited for them, and I
Yes.
respect that.
Yes.
'Cause it has to be a good match.
Fit.
But
Yeah, exactly.
it's better than doing nothing and letting that grief build up. Because I'm telling you,
Absolutely.
grief will come
And you
back
keep on
around.
hitting. I'm sorry. Go on. Go on.
No, I was just gonna say grief will come around stronger than ever if you don't face it.
Absolutely. And you keep on hitting on all these like great points. I'm trying to remember the things that you're saying, but what you said, sometimes you have to find another therapist. Like, please don't let the excuse that you don't get along with your therapist be enough for you to be like, I tried therapy, that's it. No,
Right.
it it's just like finding a doctor. Everybody does not keep the same, general physician. Sometimes you got
Mhm.
to find somebody else. So find a therapist that gels with you, that, will understand your personal struggles, that understand exactly what it is that you're happening. It doesn't have their own agenda to try to deal with whatever they're dealing with in the midst of you. Like they're there, you know what I'm saying? You're there to go through the healing process. But like Shorter said, it is actually work. It's not fun necessarily, but the reward that you have on the other side of therapy,
Yes.
or continuing therapy, like if you're like me, can be so helpful. It really can. I did want to just touch this briefly. Because I don't know. No, I don't think I knew about the death of your girls until I saw like a post on Facebook, and then you mentioned it here. And I know that just having talked to other parents who have lost children, how devastating that can be. So again, my condolences on your loss. But now that makes me admire your strength, yours and your wife, more so, because a lot of people I've seen don't make it through that storm, and definitely don't make it together. Is there any advice or any words of encouragement that you would love to give someone who has lost? Because the reality is they were still children. You know what I mean? Whether, I don't know if yours made its term, was actually born or not born, but it's still a loss. And
Right.
it's a loss of expectation, a loss of the dreams and the hopes and the things that you thought, were going to take place. How did you all find ways to move past that? And what can you say to somebody else who might be listening who have also experienced that type of loss or grief?
Great question. And Ryan and Morgan did, they were born 23 weeks early. That's part of the reason why they didn't survive. But Ryan survived for 3 days. No, Morgan survived for 3 days, and Ryan for 3 weeks. In the NICU. A lot of little beautiful babies fighting in that NICU. It was a interesting experience. It's been around those babies fighting for them lives. It's hard to even like talk or explain what that's like. But to answer your question, what we did to get through this as a couple was we just, we communicated often. We knew that would be the number one thing, to communicate our thoughts and feelings and try not to isolate ourselves from each other.
Yeah.
If anything else, we knew we needed to lean on each other. And I don't even think I realized that rate of people I say the rate of parents who experience the loss of a child, the divorce rate, I think is like, I forgot, it's a high number. It's a pretty
It
high
is
number.
high.
And I was like, wow, I had no idea. But we leaned on each other, for strength, because that was a lot to deal with, and it was kind of a journey for me because my wife, while she saw the loss of my mom and my dad and my brother, she couldn't relate to it, because
Mhm.
she hadn't experienced a loss like that. But then she related to my loss on a whole new level. So we had a whole new understanding and appreciation for each other, and our individual journey and our collective journey. So
Awesome.
the most important thing was just being engaged with each other, staying tethered when
Yeah.
when it's isolation is pulling you, just to pulling you away, just to isolate yourself, staying tethered with each other. That's what got us through, and that's what gets us through. Those hard things.
Yeah. Wow. I admire y'all. Please let her know why I said that.
Thank you. I will.
That takes a lot of strength. And I do have quite a few friends who have, I'll say, lost a child by but it was stillbirth, um, miscarriage, actually to term like you. And I just try to be, this is for the people who haven't experienced it, just try to be present. Okay?
Mm,
Like, be present. You can ask your friends, like, what do they need? What can I do to help you in this moment? How can I help you? Or don't say anything at all and just be present. I think that a lot of people are so afraid of just any type of death that they don't even know what to do. And that's fine. You can even say, I don't know what to do, but I'm here for you. And then just be there for them. Is there anything that in all of the times that you've experienced grief that you wished someone said something like that to you, or something did something in particular that maybe even then you didn't know you need, but now you look back on it and um, you're just like, I wish. And I got that from my friend Ashley. She's been phenomenal. When my mom died, she happened to be one of the first phone calls. And she was
mm,
like, what do you need? Like, what can I do to help you? I was literally sitting in the parking lot of a fast food restaurant because I had eaten all day and it was my night. We would always take turns to stay with my mom of different nights of the week between myself, my brother, and my aunt, and my sister-in-law, sometimes during the day. And yeah, I was thinking I had plans to do something different, and God had a whole another plan. And so knowing that it's a possibility that she would pass was one thing. Being in the room, seeing her unconscious is one thing. Seeing her actually pass, no longer hearing her breathe, was a whole different experience. And so to go through that, finding or being there when someone died more than one time that's what's been traumatic for me.
Yeah.
But I appreciated her for literally asking. I mean, even, do you need toothbrush, toothpaste? Do you need hygiene products? Because it's really easy not to take care of yourself when you are focused on the grief. So yeah, is there anything that you wish that someone said or did, or that you now do for others because you may not have received that, or you received it and you found it helpful?
It's funny. Yeah, two things came to mind. The first one was people always ask me, "What did I need? What did I need? What can I do for you?" And I had no idea what I needed. I was just numb. Especially with my girls. Like really all of my mom. It's different impact in a different way. You know how it is losing a mom. So I didn't know, what I needed. But there was one thing that I realized that I really value more than I ever have, because one thing I needed, the one thing that really helped me were hugs. I wasn't a big hugger, but I have someone from church, like I love her to death, and she gives the best hugs. It's a real sweet bear hug of a hug. But what that hug did for me, then it would release all that pain. I would almost want to cry when she hugged me. And now, even I hug now, you just feel the love. And I really appreciate that. And research shows hugs, help you, mentally and emotionally. Like it has an effect on your neurons in your brain. But those two things, like just being follow your instincts. Don't worry about what they need. Just bring something. You think they need toothpaste? Bring some toothpaste. Just bring whatever. If you know they like a certain soda, don't ask them if they want it. Just bring it. If they like Starbucks, bring a Starbucks. Just bring it. They may not drink it. It may sit there, but just follow your instincts. That's what I would tell people to do, because sometimes asking them what they need will frustrate them even more, because you really don't know. I think I even cried one time to someone. I was like, I don't know. Don't ask me that no more.
Right. And let me clear, because you're right. She was specific though in that. So like that. So it was a checklist. You're right. You're right. You may not be thinking about what we need, but what we do know is that everybody needs clothing, food, and shelter. Right. So maybe it's money. Like if you don't know whether where you sleeping tonight, you can. Some of the questions you can have. Do what would you like to eat? Because you still have to eat, although I don't know about you, there were times where I didn't want to. And all I could do, I would try to watch TV to kind of take my mind off of whatever. Always been a speech and drama person and entertainment person. And I'm looking at stuff and I'm bawling, like, looking at it. And I now understand something. I was watching For Life. I don't know if you ever saw that series.
No, I haven't.
Well, one of the, it was produced by 50 Cent and, or Curtis Jackson. And it was about a guy who had been falsely accused and gone to prison. And he was a lawyer. I think it was based on a true story. And he was able to get out. Like he got his degree and got out of prison, but he was on like parole, whatever. And so he would take on these cases of other prisoners, or, sometimes those that weren't, but for the most part. And it was one episode where the guy was in prison, and he was in the hospital, and I am no doctor at all. And immediately I knew exactly what his diagnosis was, because it was similar to what my mom experienced. And I was so mad at myself. Like, I can recognize this on a stupid TV show, right? But I couldn't recognize what it was in real life. So God and my mom helped. And when I went to Grief Share they do these weekly sessions. And so wherever you fall in, you fall in. So I took it it's 13 weeks. And then I did an extra I started at 9, so 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And then I also did the support groups for the holidays, which was really impactful, because you don't think about all the traditions that change. Well, I didn't, think of all I don't even like the holidays now. I love the holidays and can't stand them because I'm single. I don't have children. I'm not married. So I spend them a lot of times by myself. So they're not the happiest of times. And most of my friends, the pandemic didn't help. People are not like, hey, Lisa, you want to come over? Like during the pandemic, I had to deal with the stuff by myself. So I hope I never have to experience that again. But, just having, those practical things. But I started at week 9, which was about grief. And I had so much grief because I didn't personally try to give my mom help. I talked to her about it and maybe even yelled about, like, what's wrong with you? Like, I knew something was wrong, but I didn't recognize what is why. I was like, you should call your doctor about that. You need to call you. But if I had known, what it was, I wouldn't have suggested. I would have made, I would have encouraged even more. I would have, bugged her even more. It's so sudden. You know what I mean? Death is so sudden. One of the things you mentioned about hugs was, and my counselor says that now, my current therapist, he's like, hugging, it releases serotonin. And it does. And we know that definitely helps you. It's the feel good hormone. So I'm glad you'll never lie. It's nothing like a good hug. It's nothing like a good hug. And when you're lonely or you're dealing with grief by yourself and you don't have like friends and family to kind of go through that, or just anybody, then you're not able to release those serotonin. Like I couldn't hug anybody during the pandemic. You know what I mean? Like, or very few people that I feel comfortable enough to, because I was really staying in the house, like, when everything first hit the fan. But I say all that to say, I think you have definitely met or made some really good points, through this podcast. And yeah, just hugging is great. It also, I see something else that says we release oxytocin, a hormone that relaxes us and lowers anxiety. So hugs are wonderful.
Yeah.
You can call that, hugs are wonderful. They definitely, I think, are a great part of grief. We could probably have like multiple podcasts about this topic, but is there anything that you would like to say before we log off to anybody? And then please, if you want to leave like your contact information, even as a therapist, and if somebody is interested in contacting you, you can do that too. But this is your floor. Any contact or social media or whatever, just maybe people have questions and they're just like, I don't know how you did it. Can you help me? So
I would just like to thank you, Lisa, really, just for allowing me to come on here and tell my story in regards to grief. When I saw your post, I immediately knew, like, yeah, I saw what you were doing, and even though I didn't comment a lot, I love to see what you were doing, and when I saw you needed, some people to fill in or guests, I immediately stepped up because I wanted to support what you're doing, but also honestly, I did it for myself, to be honest. Like, just like that grief group was something I didn't want to do, but I knew I needed to do. The next
right.
step I'm doing is really challenging myself to be more outspoken about my experience with grief. So I'm starting to talk with friends more, especially, my, Black men, we're coming along better with utilizing therapy, but it's something I think we resisted for a while. So I'm turning that meaning, into my grief, into like, I'm pouring that into like, people I love, my friends, and just, I feel like when I tell my story, it normalizes what other people are going through. So I just want to, share my experience and, heal from it. Because I think I'll always be healing from the grief. The grief
Right.
doesn't go away. It just, you turn it into something else, something, better than it was when it first impacted you. So
Yeah.
I really just really want to allow you for providing this space for people like me to talk about, not just grief, but mental health in general. So
Yes,
I
thank
thank you,
you.
and I wish you the best and continued success in what you're doing.
Oh, I appreciate that. I really do. I didn't say, for those who don't know, like grief can still also lead to further mental health, issues. So it is a topic related to mental health. Not all the time, but some people who don't actually know how to deal, then it can lead to anxiety, depression, etc. So that's why it is still a topic related, to mental health. So but
Right.
no, I appreciate you taking the time to do it. You didn't have to, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful to anybody who is willing to share their story. It's not easy, and some people think it is. I've just been doing it for a while, so it
Yeah.
gets easier, but it's definitely not easy. And sometimes, it takes a lot. Some people say, well, if you're crying through it, then you're not over it. I disagree. I think that when you love somebody, so much, and you're not able to share the different things, of life with that individual like you would when they're here on earth, it definitely sometimes can shake you. And so I do this platform, like you said, also for me, but really to help other people, to encourage, uplift, inspire, let them know, that you're not alone. And if people take the time to listen, I'm sure they can glean something, from these podcasts. And that's whether I'm speaking, singing, writing, whatever. I hope that the listeners will take the time to listen to this. And, we will share it on all social media platforms. Please share with your family and friends. For those who would like to get in touch with me, I'm One Singing Lady, and that's the numeral one. On TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, you have to look under my name, and One Singing Lady, and my actual name, Lisa L. Gilliam. And then Instagram, One Singing Lady. For if you want to look up live recordings that we used to do via StreamYard, you would go to YouTube, and that's One Singing Lady, but that's spelled out OneSingingLady. And you can visit my website, LisaLGilliam.com, so you can purchase my book, 21 Days, that I did with my co-author Tracy and Worley. And that's about relationships. And it's not just about significant other relationships. It's not just for singles. I've had married couples or people who are married read it too and find information, because even though I'm not a counselor now or practicing counselor, I've had like years of experience. And so I share the things that I would share with my clients. And so far, and I also share my business too in that book. And then, you can also buy CDs or music and spoken word on my website as well. So I hope that you all will come follow myself. And did you want to put any of your stuff out, Shorter?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. My Instagram is Mike Short 76, MikeShort 76.
Okay. All right. So you all make sure you follow Shorter on there. And thank you so much for taking the time to be
Thank
a part of
you.
this. I appreciate it. I love you. We got to
Love
get
you too.
together because it's been way too long.
Yeah, I
We've
agree.
just been on social media just chilling. But, life has been life. And as they're saying, I'm using that all the time now because I feel like it's such a real description
Yeah.
of life. But thank you. Thank you for your journey to him towards healing. Thank you for being open and honest. And I hope that some other people, whether it be female or male, that listen to this will also be blessed by your story. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You have a good one. One Singing Lady out. Bye, y'all.
Bye bye.
Hello, everybody. This episode concludes season 3 of LLG's Random But Real. But I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening to my podcast, for sharing the information that you've learned on here, for actually sharing the podcast with others. It's because of you that I continue to do something that I actually enjoy doing. I hope that you have learned about our conversations about any and all things, random, and as well as understand that mental health isn't a side dish. It really is an entree. We do need to speak about it more, try to make it comfortable, or the conversations comfortable, so that we have less stigma surrounding mental health. It really is something that can impact every area of your life, both positively and negatively, if you're not getting the help that you need or you're not sustaining your mental health in a proper way. If you need help, please seek a licensed therapist, a counselor, psychologist, social worker, doctor. And we thank you again for tuning in this season. Hopefully we'll be back for another season, and I'll be able to do something else or more topics that I actually like to discuss. Again, thanks so much for tuning in and supporting. Please go ahead and visit my website, LisaLGilliam.com, and find out more information about how you can support the book, music, spoken word, bringing me out for one of the events to speak to your audience about some of the topics that we've addressed this season or that's in the book. Again, thanks again. Bye-bye.